Hello and welcome to ETAuto. I'm Nabil A. Khan. ZF Group has become world's third largest auto component manufacturer, beating Magna after acquisition of WACO. Now, ZF Group has ambitious target in India. They want to grow threefold in terms of revenue in India by 2030, including 2 billion euros of business from sourcing component. To understand how they are going to drive it, here's a conversation with Mr. Suresh KV, President, CEO, ZF India, Mr. P. Kaniappan, WACO India MD and Country Head, and Mr. Krishna Swamy Jamunathan, Head Tech Center, ZF Group in India. We are also joined by Dr. Holger Klein, member of the Board of Management of the ZF Group, Car Chassis Technology, Aftermarket, Asia Pacific and India region production. So here is the conversation from these top leaders and how are they going to expand and what is going to be their strategy in India and where does India feature in their global aspirations. Listen. So here onward, how do we see ZF and WACO collaborating? Is it going to be that the WACO will continue to focus on commercial vehicle while ZF will keep its eyes on passenger vehicle, or how is it? Do we see expansion of the business? Do we see diversification into new segment also?
For us, this was certainly a big step. Yeah, a 7 billion acquisition in the year of COVID 2020. I must say that took some courage to go on, but we fundamentally believe that the right thing to do because the technology is moving so fast, and we want to be a shaper in this industry. Yeah, so now looking at India or looking at the overall WABCO integration, I think it's way faster than what we did at the time with TRW, and it's proceeding along the plan. And for us, it's always very important that in these acquisition processes, we don't start focusing on ourselves. We wanted to achieve is keeping the business momentum and being close to our customers. And if we are close to our customers, of course, you need to ask our customers. I would say so. The business momentum, I would judge from our revenues and our profitability. And this is all getting better. Yeah. So from the financials, I would say a very successful acquisition and integration. And now coming to India, WABCO India, certainly now ZF WABCO, is a very visible player in the market, very close to the customer, and we are integrating the ZF commercial vehicle business with transmissions, steering, etc., into one division, which we call commercial vehicle systems, yeah, CVS, and this will be then the merge of those two businesses. And this will go live on the 1st of January, 2022. Yeah, so we took, if you want, 1.5 years to sort out how we create this division globally. And this is now going live in January 2022 under the umbrella of ZF.
Coming back to the mobility as a business, I see complete transformation in this space. We are no more hardware company, a lot of software is coming in, and it's not an automotive industry anymore. It's a mobility solution company. Everybody is transforming themselves. What's your thought on this? How do you see the transition taking place in the entire automotive industry, and how much you think it will change from hardware to software? What kind of direction you see?
We see basically at least two transformations in the industry. So one is from ICE to battery electric vehicles or fuel cell or alternative solutions. So that's the powertrain side. I would say that's relatively easy. Yeah. If we talk to our friends from Mahindra Racing, they will tell you something different because it's always about the last % of performance. Yeah. So it's a state-of-the-art technology, but business-wise, relatively easy. Yeah. The other one, which is more difficult, is the intelligent connected vehicle, which is software defined. Yeah, and there you come exactly to this topic of starting from a central power computing unit. Yeah, and we are offering something like this, our Pro AI. We showed and presented 1,000 teraops fast computer, supercomputer at Auto Shanghai. This will be the core, and so the electronics structure will change. On this core, you will run your functions as apps. You have a middleware software, which is then connecting to the actuators and to the sensors. We are offering the ZF middleware. We are offering the apps, yeah, call it Adopt for the commercial vehicle, or call it Cubics for vehicle motion control and pass cars. And then, of course, we have our actuators and our sensors, so the C and the ACT, and I already talked about the Think, the power unit. It will fundamentally reshape our industry. It brings in new competitors. And Krish, so you might talk a little bit of what you are doing in Chennai. So what is the scope?
Thank you, Dr. Klein. Actually, what happens, Mr. Khan, is when he talks about middleware, that is for us one of the biggest things. What happens is we are able to cut across the different divisions, and that's what we are able to offer as unique. You would have heard about AutoSAR and the technologies like that, which is where we are focusing our attention because it cuts across the division. We are able to give a layer that can go into any of the products with the balance. So on one hand, from the electrified, you get to technology that you are implementing on drives. On the other hand, we go into the ADAS, where we try to build the middleware, particularly because of the applications that we can build over that. That's one part. Then comes the vehicle motion control, one of the key technology domains where we integrate the vehicle functions. And that is where we are moving into more functions. So these are the areas that we start developing and building it stronger so that this transforms. Now, we're not touching upon autonomous. That's a whole different area where we also are involved not only in machine learning and other things, but also into developing the algorithms, whether it's a lane departure or any of this. So we touch upon all the key technology domains that we stand about, whether it is electrified, whether it is VMC, and particularly, again, active safety and passive safety. Both of it, we continue to touch because, again, the position changes. These are all both in the algorithms and in developing the middleware, we try to increase our footprint. That's how we try to grow in this area, and the transformation into software happens. Now, all this sits over what we call as the think part, which is where we eventually, it gets into a point where the functions can be ported and your hardware remains something that is enormously available for us to add.
I just want to understand what percentage of your investment or capex is going to be in hardware and what percentage will go into software to remain in the game, to remain at the leadership level. What are the 2-3 aspects that you look at that is very necessary for you apart from upping the game in software space?
We are focusing on India because India is terrific in terms of availability of young, hungry, energetic software talent. And let me say that for a second, yeah. You guys, you are in the middle of a COVID crisis, and we might come to that. We are very much engaged as a company to help our communities to get through this. If I would just look at my KPIs, like the India Tech Center, we are running at 90-95% efficiency. So somehow our guys from their home offices, they make it happen. Yeah, although there is a pandemic out there, which is again something where you see me so enthusiastic about India. It's not only the market, it's not only the opportunity to source from India or manufacture in India. It's very much the talent we see there, and how we can develop software not only for our products but as well digitalization of our processes in India for the world. Yeah.
So India rightfully deserves to be the backbone for all your software development activity?
Yes.
Global hub, you mean you can build it, right?
We are already acting like this, yeah, with our 2,500 people. They are the backbone. If something happens to India, it impacts ZF. Yeah.
I just want to understand, when you want to move into the future of mobility, do you also look at acquisitions? Do we see some acquisitions happening in that space also, so that you become, suppose you are working on building internal capability, you are collaborating, but at least some acquisitions will also play a pivotal role in the next set of readiness to be able to be solving the future of mobility space.
India has moved to connected vehicle ecosystem. Along with the BS6, most companies have now launched, the connected vehicle or fleet management solutions. So ZF WABCO also has, we wanted to play a major role there. We had a support from Europe. We have a company there, but then we felt it was absolutely essential to have a local, capability, somebody who can actually support this ecosystem at this cost level, etc. So we acquired a company called Asset Tracker in Bangalore. So actually, this company had certain technologies, portal development, hardware, firmware, etc. But what we are right now doing is not only using that just for the aftermarket business, we are building a digital engineering capability in India at Bangalore, which will actually serve as a hub for digital technology development, both for India and global requirements. And we are powering at least 2 of the Indian customers, Indian commercial vehicles connected vehicle program from ZF WABCO that includes the full ecosystem.
Thank you.
Short answer: acquisitions is part of the game.
Yes.
So just want to understand, if we talk about investing for the future, how much of your investment is going to be in the traditional hardware side? How much of it will go into new age technology like the software, connected technology, or the other software oriented, components?
It's hard to quantify. You asked the question in terms of CapEx. I would say CapEx might not be the right measurement, because it's not necessarily about buildings, testing equipment, etc. It's a lot about people and R&D. And if we look at our R&D development at the moment, we spend about 8% of our global sales on R&D. And why is that so high? We used to come from something like 4 or 5 max. It's because of this technology development. If you go into this topic of autonomous driving level 4, 5, we separated this from our normal ADAS business, which goes up to level 2+. And there we installed a team from 0 to, I don't know, a couple of 100 people within no time. And this is then budgets where you say for this single thing, you talk easily about 150 million euro per year just to develop certain things like this. So if you sum it all up, that explains this increase in terms of R&D.
I just want to understand, with this acquisition that you have done, you have become the 3rd largest component manufacturer in the world and 2nd largest in the Europe. So just want to understand, where is your future? How do you want to place yourself in the map of automotive manufacturing in the world?
It will be more than manufacturing, because we are not here just to be a component manufacturer. We are offering systems in a first step, but we are offering as well mobility as a service in certain segments. And we will see more and more service offerings around it. So if you talk about the growth, it will not only be this classical yes, we do components and manufacturing, but how do we offer functions? We defined a very clear strategy, which we call the future of mobility. And we aspire to be a shaper in this industry to help to develop into this direction together with our customers and partners.
Can you quantify the, revenue share or share to your top line from the service and from the manufacturing part?
At the moment, I would say, and here you catch me before I tell you a wrong number, but roughly, I would say, of course, a majority of what we do is certainly still components, vast majority, because there are a lot of OEMs which are asking us to just deliver a component. But then you go, for example, into 800-volt high-performing e-drives, where you from us can buy everything. You can buy the e-engine, you can have the power electronics, you can have the inverter, you can have the reduction gear. What we tell you is pick and choose. And of course, many OEMs will say, oh, I just take the inverter or I just take this. What we offer is, if you take our system, we believe we can increase the energy efficiency because we understand the full system, and that will give you an advantage because either you have a larger reach or a smaller battery, which is less cost. So this is a discussion. If we talk about these kind of systems, I would say this is already reaching quite a sizable size. So let's call it 80-20 or so, But if we look then into pure software, we started to sell now 2 years ago for the first time to a Chinese OEM just the vehicle motion control software in a license model that was for us brand new and is now picking up fast. But something where the business model changes, and at the moment certainly not that sizable, but software as a product will become more and more a trend.
Can you give us some guidance as an industry expert going forward? What percentage of business share will come from software integrated parts or supplies, and what will come from the hardware? How will the bifurcation be there in future in short to long term?
PK, do you have a perspective on the commercial vehicle in terms of software portion?
Yeah, it's difficult to give an overall number, but one or two systems which we supply. For example, in the transmission, we have the intelligence or the control system, if you call it the software systems. If you say that is one element which makes the mechanical system intelligent, I can give you just of an idea. Maybe about 30% of the total system cost today comes from electronics. Very rough estimate, but then it will only keep increasing as more and more electronics and more software, more and more digital systems will actually drive the future.
What is this for passenger vehicle, Mr. KV, if you could?
I think as we move forward, barring some structural components, the rest of all components will be driven by electronics and software. I don't know, to put a number, I think at 80 to 90% of the car would be driven by software is what I feel, if you look at it from in the medium term. Hardly any components which will remain purely mechanical.
Dr. Holger, I just want to understand, where do you see India's role in your global aspiration? What kind of contribution to your total top line you expect from India?
We expect India to be at least in 4 areas very relevant for us. So one is India is for us a large market, and it's taking off. I'm very convinced that India is taking off. One thing is clear, it's such a large country, it's such a young and mobile population. Something needs to happen to the mobility system. And if you drive through Mumbai or Delhi, you always are shocked by, are you on a parking lot or are you still driving? Yeah, the traffic situation is crazy. We need to do something about it. Yeah. Now, India, for me, is becoming very digital. Yeah. That's amazing to see, especially the younger generation, how they embrace these kind of developments and how the lifestyle is changing and how the ability to spend money on topics like mobility is changing. So I believe we are seeing a turning point where this is becoming very visible. And then especially on commercial vehicles, clear trend with industrial production and with e-commerce, which is going on, et cetera, et cetera. So there are other business drivers on top of the pure logic. It's a large country. Yeah, so it will take off. So for us, A, it's a market. B, it's a manufacturing base like for our wind power. Coimbatore, 80% of what we are doing there is export. Yeah, so the windmills for the export. You could take other examples where we are doing compressors or other components which we export because of the manufacturing excellence and the competitiveness of the cost base. This is true as well for sourcing. Yeah, so for us, India is a big sourcing market. Yeah, where we have a trusted supply base which serves us globally as a pretty large company. So manufacturing and sourcing, 2. 3, it's a hub for research and development, like we just described. Yeah, and it's not only software. If I look into what we are doing in Chennai, it's frugal engineering. Yeah, and to be successful in such a cost-sensitive market, of course, you need to have local for local engineering and local for local manufacturing, etc. But globally, it will be playing a very important role for these 2 things, software and frugal engineering, even in mechatronics. And the last thing is, it becomes for us a very important service hub. The 5th one, perhaps, is a talent market. How do we develop talent even beyond doing a certain job for us in India? So what does that mean in numbers? Yeah, we want to more or less until 2030 go to about 3 billion in revenues, about 2 billion in sourcing volume, and grow considerably, outperform the market. Yeah, so and in order to do so, we readjusted our strategy. Yeah, figuring out how do we now set up our India region. Yeah, first of all, we carved it out and said it's a region. Yeah, and this region now has the decision-making power to drive the business. Like PK here is driving a clear P&L responsibility in India, which is not the same for every business operating. So are you a subsidiary or are you driving the business? Yeah, so I would say clear example of driving the business.
Are you going to question the firm which is using ZF's name, ZF Steering in India?
Yeah, of course, we need to do so. Yeah, so because you want to have a brand, yeah, and we want to resolve the fragmentation. Yeah, so
have you approached them? Are you going to take some legal action? What is your course of action on that?
Before you take legal action, of course, you have a lot of discussions. Yeah, but I think for our trusted partners, it's very important if ZF is inside. Yeah, especially as it comes to reliability, to quality, to whatsoever. And then if somebody is operating under your name and perhaps not working with the same standards, yeah, that might cause a risk. Yeah, so of course, those are topics we need to talk about.
So you're saying you will be 3 billion euros by 2030, which include 2 billion euros of sourcing, right? That's the revenue you are looking at.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Very good. You have already announced the plan of 200 million euros investment. Just want to understand where these monies are going to be, which is the focus area when it comes to investment. And what is the long-term investment plan by 2030? What is the total investment you look at?
So we talked about the 200 for the next 5 years. Yeah. So this is very important because 2030 is still far away and many things can change on the way to 2030. Yeah. We talked about a very dynamic industry, but nevertheless, you need to put a stick in the ground to formulate an aspiration. And then you need to start running fast. Yeah. And that's where you put the money for midterm perspective. Yeah. So certainly you have seen as well that we continued acquiring land in Chennai. Yeah. So we are expanding our production capacity. We are expanding our tech centers. Yeah. We are expanding our shared service locations. Yeah. We are investing into new projects. Yeah. So all this together will amount for roughly 200 million, which are already in the plans. Yeah. So there is no vision behind it. It's just what we are going to do within the next 5 years.
So what is your current group revenue from India?
At the moment, let me think about it. Now I calculate it's about 3 to 5% or so. Yeah. Of
the global. So no, 3 billion you want to reach from where? What is the current revenue for both the entities?
So we always talk including our JVs and KV, you help me, we are roughly at
1 billion.
1 billion.
Yeah, that will be, again, we need to, we need to be a bit careful because this includes our share in the JVs, etc.
Just want to understand what happens to the listed entity here, WABCO, because you will continue to have this name WABCO in India, or you will just say ZF commercial vehicle or something like that. How will you do it?
We will switch to as a branding to ZF.
Okay.
So the name of the listed entity and all those things will be following. But first, our idea is to move to ZF brand from possibly January 2022. On the listing, I don't have any information to share. ZF is very responsibly communicating as and when any information comes. So I frankly nothing to share on that aspect. Right now, it's a listed entity. Recently we went for a offer for sale, so we had to give back the certain number of shares that we bought, which was required as a regulation, as part of the regulation. So now almost we hold about 77 point, some 2% share we are holding, but as per the regulations, we can only hold maximum 75%. So the process of selling that 2% is going on. So that has to be completed by sometime by September 2021.
Your capacity utilization at the moment is not fully utilized, if I'm not wrong. It's about 60-70% if we look at the group level. So you're talking about expansion also at such a moment. What kind of projection you have for the Indian market going forward? How do you see the recovery to be taking place in India?
I will give an outlook on the commercial vehicle segment where ZF WABCO is right now playing. While the domestic market, Mr. Nabil Khan, is not doing that well, we have a very good order inflow for the export business. It's more or less working to 100% capacity because the global markets are doing very well. The demands are, the Chennai plant, which is actually exporting, is emerging as the center of excellence for some of the critical parts, products like compressors, actuators, etc. Also, we see in the post-pandemic recovery in the last 1 month, I see a good order inflow in the aftermarket. So aftermarket also seems to be recovering quickly. But the domestic OEMs, it's only about 30% of our capacity. That's because the capacity that we have invested is about 45,000 vehicle sets. Today we are in the range of maybe this month I expect about 18,000 vehicles. But then the expansion is for export. Number one, for export, because there are more order pipeline the orders in the pipeline. So we have to create capacity. That is number one. Number two, we are also expanding our engineering footprint in the Ambattur plant, which means we need to release space for them for the workshops and other things. We need a space for expansion for that purpose. But even though the market is not doing that well in the last few months in the second wave, but you saw the recovery in the first wave. At the end of second wave, it was very rapidly recovering till March. We believe with all the initiatives the government is taking in terms of the investment, the infrastructure, mining, e-commerce, etc. We see a strong growth in certain sectors immediately in the near future, and so building capacity for the future as well. All this footprint is being created for that. Plus, of course, we would like to make India as a production center, as Dr. Klein was saying, to the other global locations. We see a good opportunity to expand the footprint, and that's how we look at it.
So from my side, I think if you look at the well-known technology, you can very clearly see that the requirement of the global market is still increasing. So because of it, that is investment. The second important aspect which you need to keep in mind is that with the combination of CVCS, the content per vehicle for ZF increases drastically. This will actually help us to increase our requirement, and that's the second reason of investment. The third important reason is as the vehicles move from BS4 to BS6, there is a gap. The gap between the Prima vehicles and premium vehicles and the normal vehicles have shortened, and there is a tendency of the consumer to go up the value chain, and they would like to have more and more high-tech vehicles, and that's exactly why we are seeing more demand. On the passenger car side also, we are seeing an increase in requirement or increase in the affinity towards technology. So with this, that is exactly why we are thinking that we will be able to outperform the market, and we are aiming to do the same. And that is the reason, fundamental reason for us to do the expansion in capacity and also in the manufacturing footprint. Last but not the least, I think what the critical part of it is going to be how we increase the content per vehicle across the industries, across the various segments in which we are operating.
Just want to understand, of this 3 billion, how much of it is going to come from automotive or highway and auto component and industrial?
Yeah, you see, we still see a lot of growth in both the areas, both in the industrial segments as well as today. If you look at it, the industrial segment plays a significant has a significant portion in the total sale. But if you really look at it, a ballpark number would be somewhere around 70-30. 70 would be automotive, 30 would be. But again, I think Nabil, before you put these numbers, we will ensure that we look at it and come back. But that would be the approximate range at which we would be there.
Do you think this continue to be the same by 2030, or you see this?
So I'm saying about 2030, because we will be significantly increasing our presence in the automotive market, and that actually will be the reason why automotive will become the majority and a mirroring of the global footprint, which
What is your current contribution from automotive?
It would be around 50 to 55%.
Do you want to expand the technical center? What kind of hiring are you looking at in terms of engineers?
See, what's happening, Mr. Khan, is when we are looking at expansion, obviously, as he said, Dr. Klein said 70% is software, and that continues to be a major area. When you talk about software, you got specializing into algorithms, machine learning, data analytics. So the shift towards the mobility part also changes the skill set. At the same time, there are core competencies on mechanical simulation are very much essential, which we service the globe. So we continue to have that as well. So that's where we work with universities and connect so that we have the new technology areas coming in, plus the core engineering, whether it is AutoSAR or any of that, we have to maintain. So that's how they spread. Again, DevOps. is one of the key areas by which you get into how you build the software. And that changes the traditional model. Everything is now on the cloud. So the skill set continues to emerge on these areas. And that's where we think we add value to the global engineering organization in supporting and expanding in this software areas.
One last and final question for you, Dr. Holger. In the discussion of connected, autonomous, shared, and electrified mobility, how do you see this happening in India? Do you think the connected will be first? Do you agree with the case scenario, or you have other alternative scenario?
Oh, I believe the fundamentals will be very similar. I think connected can be very fast, as we talked about. If you look at what we do with our fleet management systems out of Bangalore, this is going beyond commercial vehicles. So you can imagine we are driving this with taxis, etc. So the connected is probably running very, very fast. I think battery electric vehicles will come. It might start like we saw it in China with public transportation and things like this, depending on the funds which are available. And then the autonomous, let's see how much it will take. This will most probably take a little bit longer and will require then infrastructure, other topics where we might see the other ones earlier on. So connected and electric, I think, will happen very, very fast.
Do you think the future of shared has gone for a toss after this pandemic? How long this impact will be seen in shared space?
That's a good one. If you ask me, if I look at different markets, you might see how much China, which most probably came out fastest out of the COVID situation, how much you see a lasting impact on consumer behavior asking for individual transportation. So I would say a portion of what we see in terms of passenger car boom in China is as well due to the fact that you say, let's be careful, I rather take my own car. This might have an impact on public transportation and on those shared mobility solutions. But however, again, picking this example, Didi is running very well. Because the comfort level, it's so convenient. And if you are living in large cities like Mumbai or Bangalore, do you really want to have a car which is sitting around 80% of the time and you use it at max 20%, including your drive home to your village when you see your parents? Doesn't make so much sense. So I think ultimately it will change as well. But COVID might indeed have an impact on the user behavior in the short term.
If you allow me just 30 seconds, I have one last final question. Just want to understand what really pulled down the overall global revenue of ZF in 2020.
Mostly, you could say it was some issues out of the COVID impact, where you say, okay, people didn't buy less cars. Car manufacturer didn't produce that many cars, and that, of course, then is reflected into our revenues. But you can again say, if you look at the overall revenue drop globally in the automotive segment, we did better because luckily we were perhaps with the customers who were still selling reasonably well. And we are broader, as we described, with our industry segments. So where you saw special effects. And if you look then, for example, at the different regions, China was for us a big contributor in 2020, over fulfilling the plan, whereas perhaps North America was falling behind. So mixed picture, but certainly the major impact from COVID
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining ETAuto conversation. Thank you so much once again.
It was a pleasure.